All right, so in the last video, I presented to you an example of a thesis and why you need one. How now do we get there? How do we present what an actual thesis is by going through different steps? Well, it's very important that as we go through, you actually sit in the process. If you just go for something, you're not going to figure it out. You have to really hold back for a second and observe. That was the whole point of why we had those observation lessons, is that if you just go straight forward, sometimes you can insert things into either the text or into whatever it is that you're supposed to talk about and just start making stuff up. You get midway through and you go, how did I do this? Why did I do this? I don't have enough information. I don't have enough resources. I don't have enough. And that can be a huge problem. So what you need to do is you need to go through these steps and consider the following. Before you can even begin to write, you have to be curious about something. You have to have a passion for something that you're going to study in depth and present to us. So if you do not think that you can examine something and be curious about it, then there's no point in continuing whatever that topic is. You have to be able to write at least 10 pages on the subject of whatever it is that you're going to write. And if you can't do that, you might need to rethink the topic. So you have to be, therefore you must have.
So to wonder is to stand between two worlds. It's this space between. And these are often my favorite scenes in movies, cinematically speaking. So just to name a few kids movies, you may think of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, where those kids are moving through that wardrobe. You know what I'm talking about? And there's this level of darkness, and there's a physical change that's taking place that's beyond one's control or ability to make it happen, right? Maybe you remember this scene in the famous book and movie adapted by Spike Jonze, Where the Wild Things Are. Anybody a fan of that? Go ahead and flip through there. So here's Max, in his room, right? And this is what wonder looks like from a kid's perspective. Next, the bedroom, right, begins to change. And the text actually says, in that very night, in Max's room, a forest grew and grew and grew. Do you feel that? Until his ceiling hung with vines and the walls became the world all around, and an ocean tumbled by with a private boat for Max. Go to the next one. And the next slide kind of shows those three scenes all laid out on top of each other, next to each other. Wonder starts with a surprise in which we experience humility. It's bigger than us. It moves us into a nuanced or layered state of questioning, astonishment. What is happening? There's a curiosity that takes place, right, in the creative process. There's a possibility for a new vision or lived reality.
That was one of my friends, Josh. He created these t-shirts and he is an incredible artist, and that was a part of the creative mornings in Fort Wayne. That was a really fun thing before the pandemic. But now I want to show you something else that is also going to talk about curiosity because it just blows my mind.
Joy begins to reframe the whole thing. It takes all that heartbreak and loss and acknowledges it, never avoids it, never swerves around it. Yeah, that can happen. That happened to you. Yeah, that could get even worse. Yeah, but we're here. We're here. We're here. So, and the technical word is this. Here's how you spell it. Yeah, the reframing, that's the business right there. How you frame it shapes what it even becomes. Here's what I mean. I love grocery shopping. I go multiple times a week. If I go to the grocery store and then come back and Kristen's like, but you forgot, I get excited. I get to go back. There's something primal about going into the woods and filling a bucket and bringing it back into the village. I don't know what that is about. But I go to my beloved Trader Joe's right before this tour started, and the entrance is boarded up. I know. Existential horrors. But then on a shopping cart right nearby, today's entrance is this way. You know there was a meeting Doug and Carl are hiding in the back room. What are we going to do? Diane's like, give me a Sharpie and a poster. I'll take care of this. Today's entrance is this way. Let the shopping adventure continue. Yeah, there are multiple ways to read the events of life. That's what joy does. It reshapes it. Today's entrance is this way.
And that's how you develop a thesis. In fact, that is exactly what a thesis is. Having something that invites you, that presents to you, today's entrance is this way. Today's topic, today's idea is this idea, and it's this way. And here's how we're going to do it. That also means that you must inquire. You can't just be curious about something. You have to probe it. You have to ask questions. You have to agree with it or disagree with it and begin to analyze it, begin to question it, and use those questions, because that's what a thesis is. It starts with a question. It starts with a curiosity. It starts with an idea.
Many of the things I talk about I find very irritating. That's what leads me to investigate them, you know. You look around for a hair of the dog that bit you. I look into many of the new forms simply because I find them very exasperating and irritating and troublesome to peace of mind and so on. And on the other hand, I've discovered, to my amazement, that if you take some violent and irritating process, say like radio or TV, and start looking at how it works, what it's doing to you and why it's doing it to you, you can get very enthralled, very excited.
So now after you inquire about something and you're probing it and you're examining it and you're going through all the angles, you now have to find a way to communicate what you've found and what you want to argue for. And the best way to do that is to remember who you're speaking to.
There's a theory in comedy. Lenny Bruce, the American satirist, was the first to say it. Said the audience is a genius. And the idea is the audience, you regulate comedy. You decide what a comedian can and can't say on stage, because if you don't laugh at a joke, it is not socially acceptable. If you do, then just by definition, it is socially acceptable. I thought, well, we could put that to the test tonight.
When you forget about the audience, you end up saying things or crafting things in such a way that can hurt people or that can help them to misunderstand. And I say help intentionally, because you are completely able to present to people information that they can clearly understand and digest in a way that doesn't make them go, oh man, what were they saying? What were they thinking? You can present information clearly, but you also have to know your audience. If you're going to use slang, that's an informal paper. If you're going to use highfalutin language, you have to remember who it is you're speaking to. It's really that important. And just as Jimmy Carr was explaining there, if no one laughs, that means something is wrong. If you're doing jokes. So if no one understands what it is you're doing or talking about, then the whole point of academic writing is that people understand what it is you're talking about. Which is why genre is so important.
And genre is a term frequently used to define the elements that repeat themselves in similar kinds of movies, books, television shows, music, and more. Genre is what some might call typified rhetorical action. And what that means is that there are features that repeat again and again over time with few differences, in part because audiences expect certain things to happen or because they want certain kinds of experience.
And that's why we focus in on genre, is that if we're trying to communicate to people clearly and concisely in an academic way, we have to know who our audience is. We have to know the conventions of the genre. And then on top of that, we then have to present ourselves within the tone of an academic essay.
My dad's alive. Wrong tone? Is that the wrong tone? Let me try it again. I'm blessed to have my father still with us. But sometimes, some days, it's like, when? But
So now that you've considered all of that, you now have a couple of other things that are very important before you can even establish the thesis. You've thought about the topic, you've entered in and inquired about it, you've considered your audience, your tone, your genre, and now it's time to present yourself with what are you going to write? You are now going to argue for something or present information in a way from your own perspective. In doing that, the best way that I've found is to ask myself questions and then use the answers as the thesis. More on that in the next video.